Welcome to this brief video introduction to TU Dublin's Research Engagement Framework, which has been produced by the Research Engagement and Impact Office. TU Dublin defines research engagement as an active partnership between stakeholders and researchers in the creation of new knowledge and practices. So the important part here is an active partnership. It's not a one-way communication process, it's very much a dialogue and a collaboration. And by stakeholders, we mean the people who will be most affected by, interested in, and potentially able to influence the research issues that are being addressed. Engaged research, then, is a kind of research engagement where the research is collaboratively designed with the stakeholders. And by its nature, this addresses societal challenges, the issues that are impacting on people's lives every day, and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So to support people with their research engagement, we have developed a framework which is about providing useful guidance. And it's important to mention that it's one of two frameworks produced by our office. The second piece is the TU Dublin Research Impact Framework, and hopefully these will both be of use to you as you plan your research engagement and impact. So what's the format of the Research Engagement Framework? Well, it starts out with some general areas of interest, the vision, definitions, the scope, what research engagement is, relevant principles and values, and also the policy context. The next section looks at key questions that you might have about research engagement, whether you're just starting out or whether you've done a little bit before and want to enhance your practice. Then we come to the framework, and I'll show you that on the next slide. After that, then there are guidelines for each element of the framework. Then we have a section on essential supports and structures, which will link you into relevant roles and contacts in TU Dublin who can help. Then we have a section on general resources, including checklists and forms. And then finally, we have a section on further exploration. So for each element of the framework, we provide you with links and resources that you can have a look at for further reading. So this is the framework itself, and it's been designed, as you can see, in a cycle. And the idea is that you may decide to do all of these parts. You may decide to do some of these elements when you're doing research engagement. You may decide to do them in this order, or you may decide to do them in a different order. But I suppose what we're presenting you with is our idea for a comprehensive way to really look at all the different elements involved in sustaining your research engagement. So the first point on the cycle is at the top. So it's about identifying stakeholders who might share your research interests. And then having identified who might be the people you want to talk to, it's about how do you go about making contact with them? And then how do you go about building positive relationships which will benefit you and them, whether it's with stakeholders or whether it's with partners or whether it's even with interdisciplinary teams within the university. Then, having identified and contacted and started to build relationships with your partners, it's about designing the research project collaboratively. So what together would you like to research? And this also involves things like clarifying ethics, clarifying roles and responsibilities, who's going to do what and when. And then once you've got all this organised, it's a question of actually starting the research and collaborating during that process. And sometimes research projects can be short and sometimes they can be quite long. So it's about how do you support really effective collaboration? And one of the key ways to do this is by reflecting on learning, both yourself as a researcher and together with your partners and stakeholders and colleagues. Then once the research process is coming towards a point where you've got outputs, it's about how do you then work together with your stakeholders and partners to create impact. And we've broken this into two sections. The first of these is looking at education and public engagement and dialogue. So taking your research outside your research team and bringing the findings to people who might be interested in them and seeing how they might potentially be applied or be relevant or be expanded on or developed. The second part then is engaging with policymakers. And as I said, you may or may not choose to do all of these different elements within the framework. Engaging with policymakers can be a way to work towards your research having a longer term impact potentially on the systems, not just on maybe individual organizations or with individual communities, but looking at how system-wide changes can be made to improve people's living conditions and people's experiences and practices. Then we would suggest that you think about where the engaged research relationship or project is going. So is it a case that you've done what you came together to do and now you want to wrap up the relationship, in which case we suggest some steps to help you do that effectively? Or is it that you now want to build on what you've done to take a next step and do further research? And if that is the case, then you are back around to the start of the cycle, because it's a case of, for this new research project, identifying who might share your research interest. So for each of these 8 elements of the framework, we have 2 sections where you can find out information, get ideas, and do some learning in relation to them. Section 7 is the guidelines. So these include very straightforward suggestions, sort of tips on how you might do something, examples, links. We've got tables and diagrams and questions to consider. And then section 10 is where you can do further reading and viewing and learning. And this is where we have an annotated list of open source resources, which you will be able to access without paying by just clicking on the links. So that's the introduction to the framework. You can find the framework itself. The link is on the slide in front of you, as is a QR code if you want to link to it directly. Our contact information is here, so please do get in touch if you would like to do some research engagement or enhance your existing research engagement, and if you think we can be of assistance. And I'd like to thank you for listening and wish you all the best with your research engagement.